Realistically, on most jobs, we have to say no. Companies aren't going to say, well, we better not give, Jamie too much work. They're going to say, let's keep giving Jamie work, and he's a professional, he's an adult, he'll tell us when it's too much work. Being overwhelmed in tech is almost a badge of honor these days, and I wouldn't blame you if you just thought, is there anything at all I can even do about it? Every day, the requirements change. There's some new technical hurdle to overcome. It's like building your house on shifting sand. I don't know about you, but that wipes me out. And people expect you to be available all the time, whether it's Slack or online meetings. There's no time for you to actually rest anymore, and people expect that no matter what you're doing in your personal life, you can instantly jump on the call or instantly respond to a message, and so you end up feeling kind of disconnected from the people in your personal life. And social media is bombarding you with all these new technologies, and you get this feeling in the back of your mind, this anxiety that grows that's like, if I slow down for even a second, there's hundreds of other developers just waiting to take my job. Worst of all, managers have bought this lie that giving you more work and making you more efficient makes everybody more productive, when in reality, it just creates more chaos and burns everybody out. Okay, look, if you're feeling overwhelmed, I don't want to add to that by giving you more things to worry about. So let me share some things I've learned in my career about when I've become overwhelmed. And I really hope the things that I've learned since that have helped me quite a bit will help you so you can just have a really calm career and keep growing. First, I'm going to share some reasons why overwhelm is so prevalent in the tech industry. And then I'm going to give you some signs you can look for to help you know if you might be getting overwhelmed with work. You probably know already, but you may not. And at the final third of the video, I'm going to actually give you some really practical tips that I hope will really help you if you are dealing with overwhelm, make some actual changes in your life and in your career, and actually get back to growing again in your career. So why is the tech industry so overwhelming? Well, the first reason is just the relentless pace of progress. If you're on a Scrum project or something like that, every 2 weeks there's a new release delivered, but there's no break in between the end of that sprint and the next one. You just roll right into it and keep marching ahead. And it's actually worse on Kanban projects because there is no rhythm to know there's an end to anything. There's really just the end of the project, and there's an ongoing set of tickets. Also, many companies have an unlimited vacation policy. And on the surface, this sounds like a really good thing. Oh, I could take vacation whenever I want. But if you talk to most people, I think you may have even experienced this yourself, who work at one of these companies, people actually end up taking less vacation because they don't feel enough pressure to make sure that they use it. The second way that the tech industry overwhelms us, or may get you to a point where you're feeling overwhelmed, is the pressure we have to continuously learn. When you're on the job, especially if you're a developer, just part of getting your daily work done is often searching all over the internet or using ChatGPT or whatever kind of research tools you use to find the answers to your questions. And even if you're not a developer, let's say you're a product manager, you're looking at, your competitors, you're looking at other products and solutions in the market that are similar to yours, you're looking for new opportunities, you're talking to your engineering team. So there's all these new things we're acquiring just on the job. But worse than that is if you go out on social media or you go out on learning sites or you just talk to your friends or your colleagues, there seems to be this internal pressure that if you're not learning new skills and you're not, growing, that you're going to fail in your career. And while certainly you can't just ride out a current set of skills probably for 20 years, I think often when we get to a point of overwhelm in tech, it's just because we have this unrealistic pressure to keep learning, and nobody can keep up with that. The third way that we often get overwhelmed in the tech industry, and I think a big reason why it's such a problem, is we glorify hustle culture. Look, there's a lot of very well-known social media influencers that like to pump you up with a bunch of motivation about how, get out there and keep working and, work 80 hours a week to achieve your dreams. And I think, That sounds good on the surface when some of those people want to encourage you to basically burn your entire life out to achieve some super high goal. But, life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And if you go about your career that way, where basically you leave yourself no time for rest, you're going to get to a period of burnout or overwhelm probably quicker than you expect. And I actually have a career guide that you can download from my website where I talk a little bit about looking at your career over time and sort of the stages that you go through. That's a much more, I think, realistic way to think about achieving, outcomes in your career, maybe starting a company and things like that, that doesn't really require you to basically sacrifice your health and sacrifice your work-life balance and just burn yourself out. So how do you know that you're actually becoming overwhelmed? What happens? Well, I think one of the first things, and this is probably one of the more obvious ones, but a little bit further, I'm going to get into some of the ones that are a little harder to tell, is you constantly just feel kind of fatigued. Like you don't have any energy, just doing anything. Your tasks at work, things at home feel a lot more exhausting than normal. And also you can just feel really depressed. I've heard the explanation that depression is when you're focused on the past and anxiety is when you're focused on the future. I think that's pretty true. When you're depressed, often you're looking back at something in your life or in work that ultimately you can't change. It's really not very helpful. But, the other day, I actually had something happen to me where I've had 3 really difficult things happen in my personal life this year. 2 of them were with family. One of them is with sort of extended family. And, those 3 things on their own, I can handle a certain level of stress on top of my job and, having a relationship with my wife and my kids, right? There's almost like, if you think of it like you have a reservoir that holds water in your body, and that can hold an amount of stress or amount of things that you can deal with. Everyone has a threshold or a limit where if you go above that, you start to feel overwhelmed and you get angry, you get depressed, you start to feel fatigued, basically this bullet that I'm talking about, this point I'm making with you. Well, the other day I was just feeling kind of angry and I was feeling unsettled and I couldn't figure out why. And, I was talking to my wife about it at night and I'm going through all the things that I'd been, dealing with. And I realized something had just happened recently that I won't get into it, but it wasn't a huge stress, but it was still a stress. But that thing, on top of all the other things I was dealing with this year, was all that was needed to kind of fill up my reservoir, so to speak, of stress and of overwhelm, and really cause me to experience a lot of anxiety and feel really angry and stressed out. So if you're not sure why you're feeling overwhelmed, a sign can be that you can't really figure out why, and it might not be a bad idea to look back over, the recent, let's say, year or couple years. You might have a few things going on, whether it's work or personal, that seem unrelated and they seem like they're somewhat resolved. In my case, I felt like these were things that, I'm not really stressed out about them anymore. But just because they're not currently stressing you out, if they're still somewhat stressful, the cumulative amount of all those things together can really bring you to a place of overwhelm. The second sign that you're probably overwhelmed, or you may be, is you've heard the term brain fog, or basically having a hard time making decisions. I've shared with you earlier on the channel that, I've had a lot of problems with insomnia over the years. I've had, serious burnout. I shared that in a whole episode with you a few weeks back. But when I am not rested well enough, or when I'm overwhelmed, I'll find that just trivial decisions, which task I should work on first, which direction to go with the code, what things I should do or not do in my personal life, all of a sudden become way harder than they really should be. And my ability to just kind of think clearly through a sequence of processes where normally, I just kind of make the decisions and things would move forward. Suddenly I'll get to this place where I just foggy. I feel like I'm confused. I don't really know where to go. So if you're starting to feel like that, take that seriously. That's a real sign that you might be experiencing overwhelm. Another reason you might be feeling overwhelmed, or a sign of it rather, is if you basically feel inadequate at your job, but it's kind of contrary to your achievements, meaning you're actually getting a lot done. And you might even have coworkers telling you, hey, we really love the job you're working. We really appreciate, this task you did, or how hard you worked on this one thing, or how you helped us, solve this design issue. But you still are critical of yourself, and you still seem to tell yourself, man, I'm just not getting enough done, and I'm not really doing really great at this job. That, people will attribute that to imposter syndrome, and sometimes it can be, but sometimes actually, if you look into the science behind it, that's a sign of being overwhelmed. If you've got too many things you're responsible for, you can suddenly become really self-critical. The fourth sign that you might be overwhelmed is you get angry whenever people ask for your help. You've probably seen this if you've been on a project. Let's say you're a senior developer or a junior developer, and your tech lead or your lead, technical lead on your software project. Anytime you ask them for help, they kind of bark at you, or they basically make it your fault, or tell you, well, you didn't write the PR correctly, or, I don't have time. You should know better. They basically give you these disclaimer statements that somehow it's your problem. And sure, there's processes we should follow, and we don't always do them perfectly. And sometimes, asking for help is an opportunity when someone can show us, hey, I need you to go back and do something different. But the attitude that people use when they tell you that, if they kind of, again, are short with you, angry with you, bark at you, that's a really good sign that the person you're working with is probably overwhelmed, and they haven't learned how to set boundaries with their employer. They're getting too much piled on them, and they haven't figured out a way to stop that. So if you personally start to not want to help people, especially if you see this too in your personal life, let's say your wife and kids want to do something with you, or your friends want to do something with you, or there's a concert coming up, or some sporting event, or, whatever it is that you like to do in your life for fun, you find reasons not to do it. You almost get angry at the person for asking you, or at yourself for not being able to do it. That's a really good sign that you're starting to experience, or probably are right in the middle of, some serious overwhelm in your life. And the last sign that you're probably overwhelmed is the excuse that you're too busy for social activities. Whether it's somebody asking you to go out to dinner with them, or just go for a walk, or just trivial things that involve, building relationships with people, spending time together. I'll often hear people say, I'm too busy, I'm too busy, I'm too busy. And hey, if it's somebody who, let's say it's somebody on LinkedIn reaching out to me for, help with something, I literally am too busy often to just build random new relationships with people if they're asking me to hop on a call, which I get all the time, or, promote their product. I'm literally too busy. But the people who are close to you in your life, and the people who you've already kind of committed to have a relationship with, if you're always telling them, I'm just too busy, I'm just too busy, that's a big sign that you're overwhelmed and you need to do something about it. So how can you reduce overwhelm if you find yourself in the middle of it? Well, the first thing that can really help is to take a look at everything that you're responsible for, your tasks, both in your personal life and at work, and prioritize them. This is the same thing that we ask product managers to do, for example, with, work they give a Scrum team, or tickets they give a, Kanban team. But it surprises me that as developers, we often think just getting handed tickets is enough prioritization in our life. And usually we've got things we're responsible for at work other than just user stories or tickets. We've got people that we need to be mentoring, people we need to help. We may have some administrative task like filing an expense report or something we have to do. We may have some things at home that we're responsible for, I've got all kinds of stuff around here, projects that I'm responsible for. And some of those things are high priority, and some of them are not. And some of them seem urgent, but they're not. You may have heard of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's a really famous book. It was written a long time ago now, but that has a really great framework for thinking through all the tasks in your life and in work, and trying to figure out, how should you prioritize them based on a few pretty simple factors. But, one of the things I would often do in my life, and I've been honest with you about this on the channel, is when I didn't want to prioritize my work, I would do drugs. I would smoke weed, basically, because I was just so overwhelmed. I didn't even feel like I knew where to start to prioritize. And so rather than doing almost anything, I would do sort of like the bare minimum in my personal life, and I would throw so much into work. I've talked with you about this before. Instead of learning how to prioritize, I would just get high and then just kind of, escape, play a video game, play some music, hang out with my wife or my kids, and just completely, basically ignore and blow off stuff that I was responsible for. So, if you are feeling overwhelmed, I just really want to encourage you, find a way that works for you. There's tons of different ways to prioritize tasks. But again, the book I just mentioned is really helpful. And don't, escape. If you're drinking, if you're smoking, if you're doing anything else like that, that's really an escape, that's allowing you to put off what you need to do, you're going to continue to feel overwhelmed until you start chipping away at it and getting some of those things out of the way. The second way you can reduce overwhelm is to learn to say no. This is a really hard one for me. I've shared this with you many times on the channel, but when you come from a family, let's say, where you have really high expectations on you as a kid growing up, it can be really hard to learn, as an adult in your personal life and in your professional life, to really just say no to people when it's a reasonable time to do it. And so, if you're struggling with saying no and people ask a lot of you and you tend to just agree to stuff, even though you don't really probably have the time or energy, or you don't really want to do it, there's a book. Now, this is probably only going to be helpful if you believe in God, but if you don't read it, or read a different book. But the one that really helped me was there's a book called When People Are Big and God is Small. And this book really helped me kind of put in perspective how much I was moving forward in my life, basing a lot of my own personal value of myself and how successful I thought I was, and sort of what I thought I should be doing as a person on, what other people expected of me, when realistically on most jobs, we have to say no. Companies aren't going to say, well, we better not give, Jamie too much work. They're going to say, let's keep giving Jamie work, and he's a professional, he's an adult, he'll tell us when it's too much work. So, basically, if anything you can do to try to help your ability to set boundaries with people, and I'm going to make specific videos in the next year about setting boundaries, will really help you not feel overwhelmed. The third thing you can do to help just reduce or eliminate your feeling of just being overwhelmed in your life or on your projects is to practice mindfulness or prayer. In today's modern age, often we get up in the morning, we get on our cell phone right away, we get on Slack, we get into a meeting, we work all day, we're focused on the computer, then we come home, maybe we play a video game, we watch TV, we watch a YouTube video like this. We're constantly taking in information and looking at screens and accomplishing things, and it gives us no time at all to let our thoughts actually sort of be processed and settle. And, when I had a lot of problems with sleep, my insomnia, which I still do struggle with on and off for sure, one of the things that helped me was I came up with a period of worry time. Now, this isn't something I came up with personally. I'll do a whole episode on sleep this year, by the way, and share some of the things I've learned about it. But if you don't give yourself some time to really process everything that's going on in your day, where you're not taking on new information, it's just going to continue to overwhelm you. So I'd really encourage you. There's some mindfulness apps out there that'll help you with, if you want to do meditation. Also, just, if you don't want to look at it as sort of a new age type of thing, and just look at it as an ability for you to be able to give your mind rest and not be thinking about anything. And I'll warn you, if you haven't done this in a number of years, you got to be patient with yourself. It's extremely hard. You might be able to only sit with your own thoughts for like 2 minutes. Seriously, when you first start doing this, me being of religious faith, I follow Christ. Prayer is what I almost always go to when I'm stressed out and I need to let my thoughts relax. I bring my stresses to the Lord, and I ask for help with him. And sometimes I just sit there in, the peace of that he's in control and try to just let go of like, I can't get this all done. I'm feeling overwhelmed, but I'm not the one in control. And that often really helps me out. The fourth thing you can do to really help yourself recover from overwhelm or deal with it better is to exercise and get more sleep. When you're not sleeping well, it's incredibly hard to exercise. I've been struggling for the last 6 years. I used to be significantly lighter than I am right now. And I used to work out, 7 days a week. And lately, ever since I had my kind of nervous breakdown, chronic insomnia, this, I talked about this in my burnout video, but this was about 6 years ago. I go through periods where I start riding my bike a lot, where I start lifting weights again, and then I have stuff happen in my life. Sometimes I just can't cope with the stress well enough, and I start to sleep poorly, and then it's really hard to exercise. And it's kind of this vicious cycle that you get into. And it's been improving, but for me, it's kind of like I improve a little and I fall back a little, and I improve a little and I fall back a little. And it's just a process, and I'm getting older too. And it's a lot harder to stay healthy the older you get. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, like you can't take on all the stresses of the world, one way to increase that reservoir I talked about, that's sort of like, if you think of it again as something that holds your ability to sort of like buffer or handle stress before it overwhelms you, is exercise. I like to ride road bikes. There's a little trail called the Veloway here in Austin, very close to my house. I also don't mind just even going for a walk. Is excellent ability to get some exercise. You don't have to power walk it, just any kind of walking, but really anything you could do. Lifting weights is great as you get older, just really all the time. But what I found is that reservoir, that ability to take on stress, and you probably have experienced this too, increases if you're exercising regularly, meaning you can have stressful events happen in your life or happen at work, and they won't kind of blow you out into anxiety or depression or despair as quickly, because you have sort of a buffer of, your body feels really good from the workout. You have, a lot of things going through your body, hormones and things that are keeping sort of your stress at a more balanced level, so that when you do hit those stress periods, you don't just instantly flip out. And the last thing I'd really recommend you consider, if you want to reduce overwhelm in your life, and this is something that is super hard for most people, but I've done it several times over the last 6 years, and it's been really life-changing, is to take what's called a social media fast. It's basically a break, an explicit break from all social media for a period of time. Now, I should clarify here, I don't personally look at listening to podcasts or watching YouTube videos necessarily as social media. I more think of, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, WhatsApp, all that kind of stuff as Facebook, right, as social media. But the main thing here is, the more you're on social media, or really you're just consuming content, you're seeing all these other people in life doing things. And if you've got goals in your life, whether it's just your work, for another company, or you're trying to start a company like I am, when I go on LinkedIn, let's say, and I scroll 2 or 3 times, I start thinking, should I have sold 3 companies by the time I was 23, or whatever, achievement signaling people are sharing. And then all of a sudden, rather than me being excited about my life and wanting to move forward and just proud of my own achievements, I'm getting wrapped up in everybody else's. And then the other thing is, learning. You've heard me talk about this, I think, a couple years ago, but learning can be a form of procrastination. I learned this the hard way, which is, you can be basically on YouTube watching videos about some programming thing, or about, starting a business or health. But if you're not actually starting a business and taking actions in it, or you're not actually using the programming language, or you're not actually starting to exercise, you're not really doing anything different in your life, but you're getting kind of that same endorphin hit in your body, or dopamine, hit, that you think that, you're basically creating a reward for yourself that you're accomplishing something, and you're not. You're deceiving yourself. So, I would recommend you can do it for a week. You can do it for a month. My wife did it for almost a whole year. But, just uninstall the social media apps off of your phone. Take a freaking break. Just focus on the stuff right in front of you, and then come back to it if you're feeling less overwhelmed. And, I hope that just if you try at least one or hopefully a lot of these 5 tips I gave you today, if you're starting to feel really overwhelmed and some of the signs that I've given you are helping you see that you are overwhelmed, you can pull yourself out of it and just enjoy your career this year. So are you struggling with being overwhelmed? What are you going through? What are you doing to get help? Leave me some comments. Until next time, thanks.